Hi everyone, so as you know, my name's Sabrina. I did my white paper topic on ethical decision making. So what I looked at was why leaders make unethical decisions, what motivates people to make unethical decisions, what motivates people to make decisions at all, different ethical frameworks. I looked at this idea of cognitive consistency and rationalization. And I looked at a leadership style called inner leadership theory. So I'm just going to go through that with you guys, and then I'm going to interview my roommate who is in a leadership position, and she's going to give us her opinion on the different leadership roles and her responsibilities. So the first topic I want to talk about is ethical frameworks. In my paper, I discussed how ethical frameworks are made up of relativism, absolutism, and pluralism. My question to you guys is ethics relative or is it absolute? So while we're going through this paper, you can think of that. Relativism is going to be more you make ethical decisions you make decisions in general really based on your background, your culture, your demographics, different experiences you've had. Or is ethics more absolute, which means there's one universal truth, there's a moral standard that everyone in every culture, time period needs to follow, and that's it. There's no situation that would warrant someone to not follow that moral truth. A lot of people use the example of not killing someone else. So, obviously, killing someone is not ethical, but are there certain situations where it is acceptable, like in self-defense, and it can be accepted, and it pushes the moral standard a little bit. So there's this idea of pluralism, which is that not everything is relative, and some moral truths are going to be different than others. So I just want you guys to think about that, and when we go into class, we can discuss, if ethics is more absolute versus relative. So next I'm going to talk about human motivation and why people make the decisions they do, what motivates them to either be unethical or ethical. So throughout my paper I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a triangle formation. At the bottom it starts with your biological needs. Everyone needs food, air, sleep, water. And then as it moves up, it goes to safety needs, the needs to feel like belonging, and self-esteem needs. These needs are part of your deficiency needs, and then as you move up on the hierarchy, there's cognitive needs, aesthetic needs, self-actualization needs, and self-transcendence is at the top, which is basically like you're very in touch with yourself, you know what's ethical and not ethical, your motivation is completely clear on why you're making any decision that you're making, and you're just very self-aware. It's not easy to reach the top of this hierarchy. Not many people do. So I've looked more at the deficiency needs, and one being self-esteem. I personally feel like self-esteem is a huge motivator for why people make the decisions they do. They make certain decisions to move up, to be promoted, to be recognized, to be appreciated in a work setting. Seeing people on TV, commercials, people market by having actors and actresses look like they have a high self-esteem. They're happy, they're confident, and they're using their products, and that's going to make people want to feel that way, which is why they buy those type of products. So I feel like self-esteem is a huge human motivator in making decisions, and it can influence if those decisions are going to be ethical or unethical. Next, I'm going to talk about cognitive consistency and rationalization. So the idea of cognitive consistency is that our mind needs to stay at a certain level of consistency, and when that consistency is interrupted, which is called dissonance, a human's going to rationalize their decision to go back to that consistent formation. So, for example, the idea of it's nothing personal, it's just business. This is one way to rationalize maybe an unethical decision that has created dissonance in someone's mind because they knew they made a bad decision, but instead of accepting that they made a bad decision or that they, made an unethical one, they're just going to say, well, it's nothing personal, it's just business, this is what we had to do. So I discussed this idea. It is kind of like your mind sending out this wave or this frequency, just like in a car and a radio station. So a car sends out a signal, the radio station sending out a signal. Those signals need to meet in order to get a clear radio station in the car. So when those signals don't meet or are not resonant, then you're going to get a staticky, song. So it's the same thing. Your mind is sending out a signal and your morals are sending out another signal, and when they don't meet, there's dissonance, and then in order to try to get them to be back on the same level, you're usually going to rationalize and try to make up for the decisions you made. So in order to create ethical decisions, you're going to want to understand that, listen, there's some type of dissonance. I need to be aware of what decision I'm making when I feel this way and try to create a habit to not make those same decisions, to eliminate feeling like that. So the last thing I'm going to kind of go over before I move on to my interview is the idea of leadership, which is kind of what my paper is centered around, how leaders make ethical decisions. And basically, in order for a leader to make an ethical decision, there needs to be 3 elements of moral reasoning. That is the act, the consequence of the act, and the agent or the characteristics of that agent. So the agent in this case is going to be the leader. The consequence of the act is going to be whether it's ethical or unethical, and then the act itself. So in business, there's a very competitive culture which is blamed for why leaders make unethical decisions. And then we'll talk about that more, but basically there's 2 types of thinkers in leadership. There's the opportunity thinker and the obstacle thinker. And the obstacle thinker is going to see a problem and they're going to be like, I'm just going to make a decision because I don't want to have to deal with it. They have a fight or flight response, they make an emotional decision, and it usually leads to being an unethical one, where the opportunity thinker is going to be more, okay, let's think this through, let's look at all the steps, let's look at the consequences, let's look at the different outcomes that can happen, who it's going to affect, and let's make the best decision possible. It's not the easiest choice, but at least it's a well thought out response. And opportunity thinking is going to lead to more ethical decisions. So we want to promote ethical thinking and opportunity thinking within leadership in order to create these ethical decisions. There's this idea of dysfunctional thinking, which kind of, there's 10 different categories that I found. There's this all or nothing response, overgeneralization, mental filter, magnifying and minimizing the importance of negative factors is exaggerated, while importance of positive factors is minimized, emotional reasoning, which is kind of that fight or flight response, labeling and mislabeling, which I feel like we've learned through the different biases we've talked about, and then personalizing the situation, which could create an unethical decision because you're thinking more about your own reputation or your own livelihood versus what's actually beneficial for the company and the whole organization as a whole. So, obviously we want to combat this dysfunctional thinking, and the best way to kind of do that is to use self-talk, mental imagery, and to be aware of your motivations, of your biases, and why you make the decisions you do. Because if you know why you're making the decisions, then you can be like, okay, well, I shouldn't be doing this, or I understand that I feel this way, but is it the right thing to do? So it's really, really important to be aware of why people are making the decisions they do, and understanding that when there is cognitive consistency, that you just need to be aware of it and remember it and create a habit to not feel that way by not making the same decisions.
Do that.
Hi everyone, this is my roommate Erica.
Hi everyone.
She is actually in a leadership position, which was perfect for my project. So she's a chief scribe at Lewistown Hospital. Erica, do you want to tell us some of your responsibilities as a scribe there?
I do the documentation for the doctors, and I help them when they see patients so they can pay more attention to the patient other than documenting And as a chief position, I manage all the other scribes that we work with, which is a total of 10 to 15 scribes. And I do the scheduling, and I think yeah, that's it.
Very,
Yeah.
very nice. And why did you decide to take on that role?
Well, it's gonna look good in grad school applications, and I wanted experience in that field and like managing people and to see if I'm able to do it, and it turns out I can.
Would you say that is boosting your self-esteem when you took that role? You're more confident at work, you're going to look better on your application, it's going to be more of a self-esteem booster.
I would say so, because everyone looks up at you to know that you know what you're doing, and you have to guide them so they know what they're doing. So I'm definitely more comfortable and confident since I actually know what I'm doing. And yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us any ethical dilemmas that you've had to face while you've been in the leadership position at the hospital?
Yeah, sure. There was this one girl that she started off okay, but she didn't do as well as we thought that she was gonna do. So it was between keeping her, even though she's not good, versus firing her, even though everyone kind of liked her. But I ended up having to fire her because I have to look out for everyone else and not just her feelings, which sucks, but...
So, did you regret making that decision, or do you still stick with it to this day?
I don't think I regret it. I definitely feel bad, but
yeah.
At the end of the day, it's about the team. It's not just for one person. And if it's better for everyone else versus her, then you have to make that decision.
Right. My last question is there anything you would change about, like, your leadership or how your leadership style is? I mean, do you feel like you do a good job motivating people, motivating yourself?
I think that do a good job, but I'm very relaxed as a leader, and sometimes I feel like my scribes think we're just friends and I'm not a leader. So sometimes I have to make boundaries where, even though it's a little uncomfortable, I'm still their boss.
Yeah.
So that's something I would change. But other than that, I think what comes with being comfortable is, like, they can talk to me if there actually is a problem versus them just saying, oh, well, I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to do it. Yep, that's
great. This was great. Thank you so much
for
taking the time out of your night to do this. Goodbye.
Nice to meet you.
So I hope you guys liked my video. I know it was a lot to take in, but I'll go over everything in class when I do my presentation. So for the activity, I kind of want you guys to think about absolutism versus relativism. I'm going to send everybody an email that is going to ask you to complete a personality survey. There's a bunch of different ones. You guys can pick which one you want, and we're just going to kind of go over it in class and then do a little activity with that. So, thank you.